Hi and welcome back to the BrainFit show. This is the show where we talk about all things brain fitness, address some of the biggest myths surrounding the human brain, and help you in your quest to build the best learning brains. So joining me, Ian, today once again are my co-host Ellie.
Hello.
And BrainFit's founder
Hello.
Cheryl.
Hi Ian, hi Ellie.
Alright, so today we will be talking about intelligence.
Yes.
So intelligence is quite a big subject, so maybe we can start by talking about what intelligence actually means, you know?
Yeah, to me I think it means being able to acquire, understand, and perhaps even flexibly apply to different situations. Yeah, what about you?
I just think it's the ability to solve problems, especially new problems, that you can figure out some situation you haven't encountered before and come up with a good solution. So to me, I would just think of intelligence as somebody who can solve problems.
And I guess for me, my definition of intelligence will be someone who can pick up things very fast and also has a broad base of knowledge, right? So as you can see, it's quite different from all three definitions of intelligence, which leads us back to the main issue at hand, right? So what exactly is intelligence? There's so many things that can make up what we consider intelligence, and with, let's say, standardized IQ testing, you know, the typical IQ test that you see online, can all of this really be measured in just one number?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think, you know, I mean, intelligence is probably all of what we said, right? Like the ability to acquire information, to solve problems, and to be quick at it, right? So yeah, can one number represent that? But let's maybe talk about the IQ test first.
All right, sure. So for IQ test, normally it's made up of, I think, two components, right? So we've got this thing called fluid intelligence, which is more along the lines of what Ellie and Cheryl were talking about, where it's about, you know, how fast you learn new things, can you adapt, you know, basically what I think most people would see as like, you know, intelligence, right?
Yeah, you know, I think those questions, right, where A is this picture, and then B is this picture, can you see the patterns, and then can you figure out what the C is?
Right.
So that would be a standardized kind of fluid intelligence
So it's
test.
really more about problem solving, yeah, for its fluid intelligence.
And to be able to see patterns, because you got to kind of recognize, like, oh, you know, they're adding one circle, you know, every time, or they're rotating 90 degrees every time, and then you kind of apply that, right, to solve the problem.
Right. And then we also have the other aspect, which is similar to what I was talking about just now, which is called crystallized intelligence. So this is something that will naturally increase with age as you learn more things. It's just, I think, simply put, how much you know, how much knowledge do you have, how well can you apply it?
I think it's also the things you've learned from the short term being able to be consolidated into long term.
Yeah.
So
Memory,
So for instance, your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think even your general knowledge. Right.
Yeah,
so something
so-
that you learned previously, and then you're able to apply it, and you know it comes up in a situation in the near future.
Yeah, like for example, a question might be, what is the capital of France, right? You know, I mean, you might need that piece of information to solve a problem, right? But you know that, oh, it's Paris. Paris is the capital of France, right? So it's stored into your long-term memory.
Okay, so I guess, so bringing us back to this concept, this idea of like one IQ score. Okay, I mean, we can all understand maybe how it would be helpful for companies or schools. You know, they have lots of applications. They just want to get
Have
through
a
it quickly, right?
Quick overview of this individual.
But as individuals and as parents, you know, how useful is this IQ score in letting you know, how smart my child is, how likely are they going to succeed? I think that is a bigger question, right? And comes down to different types of intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking before we start, right, Ian, about the guy who drives the crate that is at the construction site. Isn't that guy intelligent as well? Because he's solving problems with digging and whatever.
That would be more of fluid intelligence, right?
You think? And also procedural, I guess, right? The know-how of the situation of, you know, digging and then maneuvering those vehicles to do that. Yeah, so there's different types, right? I mean, what are the broad types? Maybe we can talk about that.
You have your visual spatial, I think that's one.
So that would be associated with people who are very artistic, right? The artists who can really visualize and create images that are, you know, beyond what we can imagine.
Right. I mean, we also have emotional intelligence, right? So EQ, stuff like that. So how well you can regulate your own emotions, how well do you perform in social situations?
Yeah, I think that is not discussed enough. You know, I think that, parents often talk about, oh, my child's very smart, in street smart, right? We talk about that. And I often think kids who are very street smart potentially could have very high social emotional intelligence. They can navigate socially around people, but maybe they are not so great, with academic results. But yes, I think it should be recognized as a form of intelligence, not picked up by the IQ test, unfortunately, right? But I think that it is definitely an asset if you have that as well.
I think, okay, so we also have logical.
Yes.
Logical reasoning.
Yeah.
Logical reasoning.
Mathematical, people tend to kind of associate logical with mathematical kind of reasoning. I don't think I score very high on that. I'm logical, but the math part may not be my forte.
And I guess apart from that, there's also maybe linguistics.
Yeah, your linguistics. Yeah, so
Language
that would be more
intelligence.
of your, I think, your auditory processing. So
I will score high on that.
Yeah.
No, but it's true, I remember going through school, right? And then thinking, why do I find a subject like biology easy? I really liked it. But you know what I hated? I hated physics. I'm talking about the sciences. I was in pure science, triple pure science stream. But one science was really easy and one science was very, very difficult. And I remember, because I was quite a strong student, all through primary and secondary school. And this was in JC. I wanted to go overseas on the scholarship, right? My parents couldn't afford that. And at that time, I was failing my first exam and it was in physics. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, oh no, I'm really not that intelligent. So I was associating my performance, with this physics test that I was failing in. As intelligent, I couldn't do it. But as an adult, at that time, I could have thought about bio and thinking, no, that was a breeze for me. So it's really quite distinct, right? And I think when we talk about the cognitive skills, maybe it becomes clearer. But for me, I think bio is more, linguistic. I can remember the terms, the processes, I can describe it. But the physics, the lines of forces, I remember the boat is sailing in this direction, the wind was blowing, and the currents was in this direction. Where was the resultant force? I couldn't work it out.
Yeah, I think it was the same for me as well. I found physics very difficult, even chemistry as well, because it's quite difficult to relate, I think. And I think biology, you can really visualize the processes.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I felt that having stronger language was supporting me a bit more in that subject.
It's context dependent, right? So like we were talking about the crane guy. Maybe if you put any of us in a crane situation, I don't think we'll do very well. So similarly,
we'll fail.
Yeah, we will fail. We will cause an accident, right? Okay, let's just be real about that. But let's say your physics. So like you say, maybe you're not so good at physics. I wasn't good at physics either.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you're from the F science school. Are you more a language guy as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and I would like to think we all are pretty okay now. So yeah, intelligence can be quite context dependent. So I think you talked about it briefly just now. So cognitive skills, right? So there's a difference between intelligence and cognitive skills. Maybe Ellie, you can tell us more about that.
I would say that intelligence is really cognitive skills are the engines towards having a particular type of intelligence. So for instance, we talked about your visual spatial intelligence. So when you look at the cognitive skills on a more neuroscience level, you have different components, right, that
Correct.
contribute to having visual spatial intelligence.
Yes, such as visual discrimination, all these very technical sounding terms,
Yeah.
right? To be able to see differences, yet recognize patterns. Pattern recognition, it's itself, one of the cognitive skills. And reasoning, to be able to use the visual information and then think about it. But yes, even eye tracking. How accurate are you in eye tracking or perceiving lines and spaces, that very small foundational ability? That can affect how you eventually solve these, puzzle questions, I guess.
Yeah, I think even perception, right? How much space you perceive, right? Then that will also affect that.
Like between one line on the other
Correct.
line, whether it's a straight line, curved line, all these. And I think it's useful for us to mention that I think there's an assumption that we all see the same. You know what I mean? Because there is an issue that perception is not always accurate, isn't it? Right? Because our eyes are sending in signals where the brain is processing. And so I think maybe it helps the audience to understand that perception is not always accurate for everybody.
Right.
Right? And therefore, and the child doesn't know that, they haven't perceived as what everybody else is perceiving. So therefore, with the faulty perception, how can then they get to the right answer? Right? Because you're not even seeing the right, or the thing that
it's like,
everybody
for
else
example,
is.
a colorblind person. So they see something as blue their whole life, but they learn it as red. And like, we'll never know, right?
Yes,
That, like,
exactly. That's a good example. Yeah. So, so there's all these cognitive engine, right? The drivers of IQ. So if we, another way to think about it is, if IQ is problem solving, then cognitive skills are the tools to help you to problem solve, right? So you need all these visual perception, visual processing, and then if you have all of them working at a high level, wow, visual spatial intelligence might be great, right?
I think,
you can
like,
solve problems.
using your examples of this idea of cognition as an engine, maybe you can think about it as like in F1, so your cognitive skills are like how good your car is. Does it have the right tools available? Is it fast enough? Stuff like that. Whereas your intelligence is the driver in the seat, like how well can they steer and use what they have, So let's
I love
think
that
about,
example.
let's use the example of a race, right? Okay, maybe if your car is fast enough alone, you could win a race, but the problem is that it's not going to be very consistent, right? In order to consistently win races, you're going to need the best of both. So which is why it's important to build both cognition and intelligence.
Yes, and I think the emphasis often people will have is that you learn to drive, right? That the more you learn to drive, then you'll be a better driver. But nobody talks as much about the car and the engine, right? Which is kind of like the brain level. You're studying, you're learning, you're repeating information, telling the child how you should be solving this kind of math problems and that kind of math problems. But nobody's really looking at the visual perception, the spatial perception. Is it accurate? The processing speed, the working memory, all these drivers of it, which is the kind of parts of the car,
right?
In your example.
Maybe we can give some practical strategies on how, maybe not say practical strategies, but just some examples of how we can build, let's start with cognition. How can you improve your cognitive skills, which is what we do at BrainFit, right?
So this is where we talk about nurture, right? Nurturing the internal environment.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So I think one question was whether is intelligence
Inherited? Yeah.
Inherited, or is it nurtured?
I think it's both, right? I mean, the research has shown that there is definitely a genetic contribution, right? It is inherited. But that's not the end of the story, because the brain is changeable all through life. So whatever we do or not doing, it has an influence, right, on the final outcome. And then you mentioned epigenetics, isn't it?
Right, yeah. So maybe epigenetics, in simple terms, is like everybody is born with a range. So you think about intelligence as like, let's say, 0 where you cannot function at all, and then 100 where you're like, let's say, Newton, Einstein, something like that. So most people, this range is quite big, so it can fall anywhere in the middle. So I don't think it's a good, necessarily correct thing to say that like, okay, my child wasn't born smart and therefore they cannot succeed, because this range is naturally quite big to begin with. With the right environment, everybody can be towards the top end of the range. Although maybe most people will not be born with the capability to be
Einstein level.
Einstein, right? But that doesn't mean, you don't really need to be Newton, Einstein level to succeed, right?
We could be the best cook, for example.
You could, yeah, exactly. So, like you said, nature and nurture. But I think overall, if we really had to pick a side, I think nurture is still more important.
Yeah, I think it's really useful, how you talk about it as a range. That means you're born with this range, right? But are you at this end of the range or at the other end of the range? And I guess for parents, for me as a mom, you want to nudge your child towards that stronger end as much as you can, right? Intelligence, of course, you can brag about it. Oh, my child is so smart. But it's not just that. Intelligence has been shown to affect happiness levels, right? So because if you have more abilities to learn, to solve problems, I guess satisfaction can be higher. There could be more options as well. Yeah. So
I think knowing this
important
as well, it gives parents that hope that okay, my child can get better with targeted exercises that help strengthen all these skills that the child is lacking in, right?
Yeah.
That it's not the end of the story.
not
if
static.
my child is not doing well in school at this point in time, right? They can do something to actually help their child.
Yep, nudge them and move them towards the other end of the spectrum. You were just saying that we're supposed to be sharing some practical strategy. How do we build cognitive skills? It's like going to the gym, I guess.
Yeah.
The best way to explain it is not very much different from training the body.
No, not really. I mean, I think we've talked about it in a
Previous episode,
before,
yes.
right? But I guess just to briefly recap, it's like going to the gym, so we do memory exercises, even simple things like your daily crossword puzzle, stuff like that. It has been shown to slow down memory and intelligence, what do you call
Decline.
it? Decline, yeah, correct. Slow that down and also just help you build up general skills in general that will help you function better, right?
Yeah, but for a child, it may not be enough though. So one of the key things, like training muscles, right, you need to level up, right? So you can't keep lifting the same weight. So that part, that means challenges have to be stepped up, like the 80-20 rule, right? You're exercising where the task can be done 80%, but 20% is a challenge. So the goal is to kind of work through this 20% to become 100. And then when you get there, you nudge it up and make the task 20% harder again. Like lifting a heavier weight.
Right. Just constantly ensuring we see some progression.
Correct.
Basically.
I feel as a parent, right, the biggest challenge in cognitive training is not, I mean, now we have the science of it, we have the know-how, we kind of know what kind of exercises, we have a test that can identify the area that needs strengthening. So we have gone quite far, but one of the biggest challenges, I think, is the need of consistency and regularity. That's very hard because our kids are very busy. That you need to commit half an hour, right, is what we said. But you really got to do that. And so amidst all the CCAs and all the different activities that the child has, to really put aside this 30 minutes, every day, and to commit to that. And because when you're training the brain, like lifting the weights, you may not be able to see your six packs immediately, right? Right. And even for the body, you can slowly see the bulking up. For the brain, you can't even see it. It could feel like you are doing something for half an hour, my precious time, but it's not going anywhere. So I feel that is the bigger challenge.
Consistency.
I think consistency is also really important because in the beginning, it may be very difficult to get started even, but once you do it consistently every week and you go on for months, it gets easier to just get to the task and just do it.
That's right. The question is whether you get to that stage, where you have the habit, to keep going. But we've seen the benefits of those who push through.
And I mean, it's not an easy thing to nurture as well, right? Because I mean, everybody sets New Year's resolutions. How many people actually can follow through with it? So
it's the same thing, right?
Exactly.
How many of us reach our goals at the end of the year? I think the percentage is small.
So I think that it would be helpful, if you just get started. So being in BrainFit or signing up your child at BrainFit is really getting them started on something.
And we hope to create the environment to help you develop this habit that is wonderful, but not easy. Right? So, a whole kind of support system to get the child to be building their brain,
and
on a regular basis.
Also understanding what drives their motivation, right?
Yes, and to find, because cognitive skills, apart from intelligence, right, as you are building up your capabilities, as you get a better car, right, then you have more routes you can take. Right. So maybe you previously couldn't do a terrain that's different, for example, right? Maybe not F1, but now you have a car that have the abilities, right, to go on a different terrain. So you can then increase interest, right? Expand what the child may previously find not interesting.
Right.
Lots of benefits. Okay, so come and brain train.
I think we can move on to the Q&A section. So what are some ways to help improve my child's intelligence? Okay, so we just talked about cognitive skills, how you can improve them. So now let's talk about intelligence. So how can we make the driver a better driver?
So I think earlier we did speak quite extensively about visual spatial intelligence. So with visual spatial intelligence, we said that certain cognitive skills such as visual perception skills is very important. Spatial sense is important. So certain things such as ball catching even will help with that spatial sense because the child is trying to gauge, how far they are from the ground and how much force they need to put in to bounce the ball and catch. Yeah, so ball catching, we do that a lot at BrainFit.
Yeah. So very
Yeah.
quite simple looking activity, but really quite powerful with the neuroscience effects that it can bring. So that would be one example. I think the other, apart from the cognitive skills, would be some of these higher order thinking skills, like when you are teaching a science question, right? So if you break it down, there's quite a few critical thinking skills that are also involved that will contribute to intelligence, which is problem solving, right? I mean, if you take that big umbrella term. So, for example, if rather than just going for answering technique, yeah, which is important to get the grade, the score that we want, but if we are looking at it from the point of view that does the child really understand cause and effect relationship, because cause and effect relationships exist everywhere. It's kind of like the fundamental in figuring out a lot of patterns of things that are going on in life, right? So whether the child is able to think in a very sequential manner, step by step, so that they're not all over the place, right? So I think some of these thinking skills, if we start to think of exam questions a little bit more than just getting the grade, but is the child applying the right thinking skills and strategy? I think that can help with intelligence, because those are really the so if you think of cognitive skills as the engine of the car, so I will put thinking skills at the driving level, right? Where you have these different ways of understanding terrain, for example, or how you would steer, or maybe rainy weather or dry weather. So you have these different thinking abilities to navigate different situations that's coming at you. So I feel that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, I think your point about having to understand the question, what is it requiring the child to do, that is very helpful. For instance, I think recently online parents have been circulating certain math questions, right, that require, I think, a lot of visual skills.
Yeah, the very hard ones.
Yeah, those that require the child to really try to visualize moving certain shapes within the question, right, to figure out the answer. Yeah, so that one requires a lot of pattern recognition.
Yeah,
visualization skills.
Yeah. So to your point, it's breaking down things, isn't
correct.
it? Yeah, but of course we break down things around the brain kind of skills, right? Which is why cognitive skills, the thinking skills, the spatial skills. So this kind of terminology that we use. But I mean, at the end of the day, they are really the biological drivers of learning. If you want to solve that math, you have to be able to visualize. You have to have the spatial skills. You can't run away from it. Right, so so I think even thinking about questions in that vein will be helpful for parents. Like apart from just 2 marks, how are we going to do this or memorize, and but to really see from a skill the small bits that it's putting coming together to support your child in answering that question.
Correct. So that's where it becomes helpful to understand if your child is not doing well with more tuition. Right. Yeah, because cramming the same content that the brain is not able to process well doesn't work.
Correct. Because it's not really a math issue per se anymore, isn't it? I mean, like to that question, it's more the underlying brain gaps, that they are really causing that understanding to be so challenging. So no matter how many ways you are breaking down the question to the child or repeating, different types of words to teach the child, with those gaps, it still make mastering, getting the answer really hard. I wish we knew this when I was solving my physics question. If I had jumped on the trampoline, I would have been able to do my physics, right, Ellie? You and I, right? If we had those spatial sense, so we could have been an all-rounder. That's what I truly believe. We were lacking some of those skills. What if we had those? So I mean, the kids are fortunate, I think. Now that we have more
so many
insights.
options, right?
I mean, before nobody knows that you needed all these skills. So at least now we know,
Right.
and we also know how to build. So
Correct. And I mean, like one option that we're talking about, it's exactly what we do here at BrainFit. So where we really focus on building your child's cognitive skills and also their thinking skills, their intelligence skills. So if you're interested in finding out more, if you believe in what we do, Ellie, where can they do so?
You can visit us at our website at www.brainfit.com.sg or find us in our socials.
And also, if you would like to send in any of your own questions for us to answer, you can also do so from the same avenues.
Yep.
Right? So thank you once again for tuning in, and join us next time in our quest to help you build the
best
learning
Brain.
Bye-bye.